Filmmaker Raoul Peck has an esteemed body of work ranging from I Am Not Your Negro to Exterminate All the Brutes. His latest documentary is Silver Dollar Road. I'm Tom Powers, and this is Pure Nonfiction. Raoul Peck's new film, Silver Dollar Road, profiles a black family in North Carolina, the Reals, who inherited waterfront property that was passed from generation to generation for over 100 years. But in the 1980s, a fraudulent land claim was made on their property that set into motion several decades of real estate developers trying to lay claim to it. The film, Silver Dollar Road, shows how the Reals family refused to give in to immense pressure of lawsuits, violence, and a court order that sent 2 family members to jail for refusing to vacate the property. Raoul's earlier film, I Am Not Your Negro, based on the writing of James Baldwin, was an essay on black resistance to racism. In Silver Dollar Road, he takes up similar themes, only as a family saga. The film begins in 2021 at a party for the family matriarch Gertrude as she's turning 95 years old.
Happy birthday, dear Grandma. Happy birthday to you.
Raoul pays close attention to 3 generations of women in the family who've been at the forefront of protecting their land. Here's Gertrude's granddaughter, Kim Duhan.
I did go to the market with Grandma to help out. Grandma was very well respected, and she had a lot of clientele when it came down to the produce and the seafood that she sold. Technically, she was probably considered one of the richest black women in the community because that property was so valuable. And not valuable to us from a monetary standpoint, but valuable to us because of the history, and the beauty of it.
The film draws upon a wealth of previous reporting. Journalist Lizzie Presser covered the case for an article jointly published by ProPublica and The New Yorker. We'll link to her piece in the show notes. During her reporting, she teamed with videographer Mayeta Clark, who filmed extensively with the Reals. When Raoul joined the project, that footage was a valuable resource. As I was preparing for this interview, I rewatched a speech that Raoul gave at the Doc NYC Festival 2 years ago. He paid tribute to an influential documentary.
But I do want to acknowledge one particular filmmaker who literally shattered my comprehension of political documentary filmmaking. When I didn't even know that I wanted to become a filmmaker. I felt then something that I never ever felt again in such a visceral way. The notion of reality in the making caught on film. I am talking, of course, about Barbara Koppel and her legendary Harlem County, USA.
With that in mind, I started our interview by asking Raoul if he remembers when he first saw Harlan County, USA.
I probably was in Berlin. I was in an environment that was very political. We were very often on the streets. We were working with unions. I was, in organized groups. It was a very international set of people. And I probably saw it, I don't know, but I probably have seen it during the Berlin Film Festival. I don't remember what year it was, by the way. So filmmaking at the time for me was, how do you make impact? How do you explain what's going on and reach out people? And this particular film made exactly that. It really gives you the impetus to do what you were doing, politically. It gives you the impetus to do more. And you saw the people with whom or for whom you were fighting, fighting on the screen and being involved and also another aspect is, to nowadays is not that uncommon, but to actually see people risking their lives. Shots are being shot during the shooting, and so it's really life in action. This is everything I thought that documentary should be, to be in the middle of action. And you, as a filmmaker, you're not just an observer. You're not just somebody who reports. You are part of the story. Contrary to journalists who all say, so I don't want to be the, part of the story. Yes, but you are still a citizen as well. So it's about you. It's about your role in society. So you can be the neutral observer, So this film, had all the ingredient that are for me key to making documentaries.
And when you saw it, were you already geared towards making films, or were you still making a transition into making films?
I don't remember. I should have Googled the date. Where was I?
Harlan County came out in 1976. I don't know when.
19. Well, then I went to Berlin 1973. So I was in the midst of it, and I probably at the time did not complete documentary to be a profession for me, because I was already studying industrial economy. But I was making photo and a little bit of film on the side. And I think it's probably unknown to me, influenced me, to show me that in fact, filmmaking is an incredible tool for whatever the political job we were doing. And by the way, during that same time, there was what we called at the time militant filmmaking. And that filmmaking for me was bound to fail, because the language used, the skilled use, the image didn't have to be well, the sounds not well, the editing, it was about, not to be negative or, derisive about those films, but it felt like it was more propaganda than anything else. It was not about convincing people. It was about, convincing the people who were already convinced, And I knew it didn't work for me. I didn't want to just be among, people thinking like me. The fight was, how do we have more and more people understanding what's going on, And so I knew there was another way. I didn't know then that I would be very deep in it a few years down. But what I was trying to do with my photos, with my writing, my interviews, I started doing during the festivals, among other things. It was about linking the third world with what was going in Europe. And by the way, some of my great friendship was during the Berlin Festival, because I would go interview for some of the leftist newspaper filmmaker from the third world, from Brazil, from Colombia, from Cuba. I became friends with a lot of Cuban filmmakers. So it really was the rebuilding of a community for me, of filmmakers, people working on the worst conditions, sometimes under dictatorships. So all this did school me, and it always made documentary something that you do, and that has to have meaning and impact, not just entertainment, or not at all entertainment, and not at all for a career. It was about, how do you move everything forward.
Let me fast forward to Silver Dollar Road. This is a story that goes back several decades, and the work that you're doing in this film builds upon work that other journalists and videographers have been doing. Lizzie Presser is the ProPublica journalist who wrote a big article about this story in 2019. And I understand a videographer working with ProPublica, Mayeta Clark, had been doing a lot of filming over the years. Can you talk about the qualities that those two journalists brought to this story?
I think for me that was key. When after I was engaged in that project, first as executive producer, then I decided to direct. It was clear that all the footage that were shot prior to my arrival were archived, an incredible kind of archive, because and I think because Mayeta and Lizzie, they are journalists primarily, but they did something that rarely journalists have the occasion to do, is basically to be embedded and spend a lot of time with your subject, not judging, and being there with some sort of empathy to listen. And those women, they spent a lot of time with the family. So for me, that was incredible footage, moving, emotional, true, really kind of cinema verite. And you don't feel the camera, they film the grandmother when she's alone thinking. They film their daily lives, and that's all the things I like. That's all the thing I would have to do if I had taken the project early on. So that was valuable moment, valuable images. So for me, it was then to make some decisive choices, like who is telling the story, like what is the story, because that story has so many layers and so many possible angles. So, but it was quick for me. The first thing I did, which helped a lot, is that I decided to edit all those archives, to see what do I got, what is there, because I knew it was incredible, valuable, but what can I really use, in order to tell a story? So I basically had 40 minutes of edit, and I felt the film was there. I had the idea of a film. I had, how it would develop. And then I took the decision, the core decision was to have Kim and Mamie telling the story, the two women who have been, carrying the weight of this whole tragedy. And that was an important choice, because they were extraordinary storyteller. They are strong women. They are women who has no problem in showing their weaknesses as well, that they can be depressed, they can be sad, they can be totally discouraged. And they were funny. They were strong. So you can't have better narrators, And then politically, it also was important for me to say, okay, do I go into what usually, I would say, US documentaries and sometimes European documentaries does, is to, okay, you have that family story or that individual story, and let's make it bigger by going on the other side and interrogated everybody. Let's, bump it up in, let's have talking heads. Let's have specialists. And I felt, I already had all the specialists. Lizzie has done her homework. She had interviewed everybody. And all that documentation did help me understand the depth of the problem. But ultimately, I thought, well, people can read that. They don't need it in my film. But what they could gain from the film is to maybe learn about these other people, how, they are real people, they are human beings, and they are incredibly sympathetic, and they have a wrenching story to tell. Let them tell the story. We don't need anybody else. We don't need talking heads. And by the way, those are people which we rarely see in cinema. Most of the time, there is some sort of wanting to, because they might not speak the English like, in New York or in LA, or they are not mainstream in the sense that, urban, educated people. And we might have some paternalistic approach to them, that we have to explain what they say. We have to explain, well, they mean that, but in fact, there is always the professor, putting it in words that are easy for the general audience. I decided, no, why? They have the same rights to have the whole show for themselves. And that's what I decided. They are the show. They are the one talking about their lives, their happiness, their fight, whatever their life is. They have center stage.
The members of the Reels family have been telling their story in different ways for many years while this battle has dragged on. And when you arrive as another storyteller, I wonder what it meant for you to make a bond with them. I mean, I'm sure that over the years they've talked to journalists who they put some faith in, and maybe that faith didn't come through, or got their story wrong, or didn't get their story enough, or
and because I know that conversation, a lot of younger or aspiring filmmaker might watch it, and I always try to demystify our work. What we do. There is no mystery. The first thing I can say about that, first of all, Lizzie did the whole legwork that I would normally have to do. She spent almost or even more than 2 years there. Going there, and going there is not like you just take an airplane and you land there and you're there in 5 minutes. It's multiple ways. You have to find the best way to get there and drive to Silver Dollar Road. And once you're there, you are in the no man's land. It's a place that that is really different than everything else around you. So they had that, made that, all those steps. They spent time with the family to a point where the first time I went there, of course, Lizzie introduced me, but I could watch, I could read the room and see how Lizzie was at home, even though she always wants to be the journalist. No, I don't interfere. But, that's common sense. That's human behavior. That's human, she has a skill to feel at ease, even though she's a white, very educated woman and journalist, but she felt comfortable and the people felt comfortable with her. So she did her job. And so I benefited from that too. And when I came, it was the same as well, because my urgency is always to feel at ease with the people and that the people trust me as well. That's part of my job. I didn't feel like I was in a foreign country. I recognized the grandmother as my own grandmother. Everything was familiar, and once you always have that human approach, it always work, if you're a bully in New York, you will be a bully there too. So you transport whoever you are. It's that's why I say it's about what do you project, and if people are going to trust you or not. And to the fact that they were tired, yes, they were tired because they saw Mayeta filming. They saw there were 2 or 3 other DPs there for a few days, and they left. And so for them, not knowing what filmmaking is, there would be some film and it would come like maybe in 6 months or in a year. But after 2 years and more, to have another filmmaker come, of course, there was this kind of disbelief. I could feel some of the question, is this going to be a real film, or is it going to be the film, etc. So, but that's easy to dispel, to say. And I came with some pedigree. The first time I went there, it was the 95th-year-old Gertrude Reel's birthday. So the whole family was there, but also people coming from the north, from the south, And some of them have seen I Am Not Your Negro. They knew a little bit who I was, or some of them, and they talk among each other. So I saw the dynamic, and within a few hours, we had a barbecue. I had my team set up stuff because I wanted to shoot that anniversary. And in fact, that's the first sequence in the film.
This is the 95th birthday of the matriarch of the family, Gertrude Reels. In the film, we really see these three generations of women, as you've described. Gertrude Reels in her 90s, her daughter Mamie Ellison, who carried on a lot of this fight, and Gertrude's granddaughter Kim Duhan, who is really probably the future of carrying on what will be a continuing struggle to
her niece. She's her niece. Yeah.
Kim is Mamie's niece.
Yes.
You talked about the strength that you saw in these women, and I wonder if you can elaborate your intentionality to anchor the story in these women.
Well, again, you don't have many ways to tell a story like this, and especially when it's a very complicated story from the legal side. These people have been fighting for several decades with many ups and downs, and mostly downs, of them fighting the justice system, up to the point where the two brothers will go to prison. So this is central for them. And at the same time, it cannot be the whole story, because you need to really make sure that they are first and foremost real human beings. They are not just subject of a story. They are not just victim of a drama. And I had to find a way to, how do I stay on their side? How do I stay, what would it be if it's my grandmother, if it's my sister or my mother? I have to bring my empathy as far as that, so I have also to protect them. I do think as a filmmaker, I have responsibility for the people I film as well. The choice of Mamie and Kim was also a safe choice, because then I would not feel that I'm speaking in their place, that I was not overriding them. At the same time, I could help them tell the story a way that would be understandable by everybody. So it was a back and forth between the both of them. And in between interviews, I had long time of conversation with the both of them. It was important that I understand stuff that were unsaid, that I also know what kind of tension there were in the families. There are stories that we don't need to tell because that's not the man's story. And I took side, very clearly. I excluded everything that could be a sort of they say, she said, and okay, and show what I call the other side. No, because the other side, we know it. We have seen it in thousands of films, the promoter, the lawyers, the judges, we know those stories. What I wanted to stay with, and I think that's why people are angry at the end of the film, is that those people are close to you by the time the film ends. You've been living with them. You trust them. You feel them. And you see what the outside world, because that's how you feel it. The outside world is basically, harassing them, putting them in jail, taking their livelihood from them, although they were asking nobody for anything, and that's the anger, that injustice. And so I think the film managed to do that because I made the choice at the beginning to stay close to them.
So two other key figures in the story are Melvin and Lacurtis, the two brothers who were sent to jail by a judge for 8 years for refusing to vacate their land. Can you talk about what your experience of Melvin and LaCurtis were?
Well, both of them were, I had to deal differently because, of course, they are the first and foremost victim, even though the whole family is victim and as if the whole family went to jail with them. But they are the one who basically made the decision that no, we're not going to sign up and leave the land and destroy our houses. We better go to prison. And so they went to prison, but without knowing that it will take 8 years. Going to prison for contempt, this is just, you go for a few days, for a week, and the worst is that you have to come back in front of a judge after 90 days. But to be put in a cell, and we are talking a sheriff cell, not like a federal prison where you have all sort of services. You can go in the yard, you can do sport, also. No, it's a cell where you are just awaiting trial. So, not knowing, you didn't commit a crime, you were not condemned for a specific amount of time in jail. And imagine the psychological setup, And so those two men are clearly very traumatized, and up to a point where you would think, well, they are totally dehumanized, they just want to go out there for vengeance and sue everybody and get revenge. No, they are broken partly, but at the same time, they feel like they did it, they didn't submit. And so it's a very contradictory feeling, and both of them feel it different way. Melvin is still the exuberant, funny man and who likes to music, who, like Mammy said, who likes women, and he still wants to be a fisherman, but he's older now. He's like more than 70 years old, but he still has life in him. Whereas, like Curtis, is there is a sentence he says toward the end of the film. I just try not to hate. And that's a strong statement. How human, more human can you be? You state the obvious. Normally, you should hate everybody for what they have done to you. And he said, I'm trying not to hate, and that's, for me, that's strong. And I didn't want a sad ending. It's just life, I didn't want any ending, by the way. It's really their fight continues, life continue, and they will find a way to deal with it and not give, the usual, end of a film, and then you can go home and say, well, I'll watch an extraordinary film, and it's no, something stay with you and push you to react, push you to do something, or even if it's just be informed, get some information about what's going on, and write to your congressman.
I want to ask about the meaning of land in this story. What the meaning of land means to you. You're someone who's moved around the world, Haiti to Europe to America. When you are engaging with people who are so deeply rooted in their piece of land, willing to go to jail for 8 years to stay on that land, how do you think about that?
Well, there are two sides. There is a personal side and a more historical, political one. The personal side is the fact that my father is an agronomist. So I grew up, my first photos, I remember as a 2-3-year-old boy in Haiti. I was in a campus where my father was teaching. He was a professor at the academy, at the Department for Agriculture in the Haitian university. We were in the field. I grew up with tractors. I grew up with all of this. So, and this is something I realized after that. And my father had some piece of land in far away in the province, which I inherited. So I go there. I'm planting trees as well. So it's an environment that I know. Those are people. I talk with people that are farmers all the time. I have the same problem that they have when it's not raining. I see how they being taken advantage of when they are selling their coffees. So land is part of life. It's part of identity for me. It's part of home. You know, I've lived in many different countries, but still Haiti still is my home. That the few acres of land that I have, it's really important to me. I want to make sure to be able to go back there. That's one side, a more personal side. The other one is land is what I used to say now is the DNA of America. America was created on stolen land. Even the concept of land property, the indigenous did not own land, they took care of land. And if people forget that, they don't understand at all what happened to America. In the same token, you can say, well, once you bring that concept to the continent that you could own, that land is a commodity, well, then people can be a commodity too. So you imported, black bodies to be a commodities that you could exchange, mortgage, etc. And you create a land where all new colonizer could get a piece of land. The state always makes sure that every new generation get more land because they knew exactly that was the source of wealth. Or one of the things they make sure of is that the indigenous people had less and less land and that the enslaved did not have land at all. And until the Civil War, after the Civil War, land was promised because everybody was expecting, now what? We are free. So what's the story now? Are you, expect us to go and work in factories or, you're going to give us the real freedom, which is let us have our piece of land. We don't need anything else from you. But even that did not happen. So basically, it's explained everything that we have today. So it's, there is no mystery why predominantly Black minorities, indigenous from Florida to Alaska don't have economical stability because they didn't have access to land. That's the key story. I say that in Exterminate All the Brutes. All the founding fathers were real estate people. They had something to do with land because that was the central commodity. Without land, you're nobody. That's the core problem and core issue of America.
And do you feel like in Silver Dollar Road, you've found the way to personify that story?
Well, yeah, it was, I didn't want to just have a story about this family alone. It was as important to put that family in the structure, the general structure of this story and this history, that you knew exactly where they are, where they fit in that bigger story. So we have moments in the film where you make clearly that connection. And we have a few subtitles also that very briefly tell the story of how, basically when Black people finally, when they didn't receive any land, basically they bought, end of 19th century, they start buying whatever they could find that was the cheapest, which was swampland and sandy coast land that they worked on and make them profitable. And then the violence came, out of jealousy and economical wants. They were violently pushed out of their land. That's how the lynching started. The lynching is not primarily a racist thing. It was used, racist was used after that, but the primary goal was, let's get those black out of that land. We need that land back. And then the 1920s came the boom of the tourist industry. So now we want also the coastal parts, and then they started all over the country to basically make sure, whether it's through legal, illegal means, tax hike, theft, valids, they got, and the number, like basically within less than 100 years, black lost 90% of their land, 90%.
It's an astonishing figure that this film, I think, really gives it an emotional heart to. This is a film about generations, and there's to me, a very poetic moment of the youngest generation of young girls who are singing on the street.
Okay, yeah, this is our beach. This is our land. Right? This is our water, our club, everything. This is our land. Okay, this is our water. Yeah, this is our club, our space, anything. Oh, this is our land. Okay, this is our water.
I wonder if you can just describe how that scene came about.
Well, that's a scene I didn't shoot, but that's also one of these scenes where I think, because Mayeta, Lizzie, they are women, and I think they had a great relationship with the girls. They spent a lot of time playing or chatting with them, and they observe how, what their games was. And that's the kind of thing that happened because you spent a lot of time there. You're not there on a shoot where, you have 1 day, 2 days, and you have to go back, catch your plane. No, it's, you have time. You have to let those moments arrive.
Mamie and Kim came to the film's premiere at the Toronto Film Festival. What was that experience like to be with them as this film was reaching an audience for the first time?
For them, it was extraordinary. For Mamie, that was the first time she was, coming out of the US, and the first time she left, took an airplane to come to New York. That's when, I had her flown to come and work with me for a few days. And so, it's a person that really, they live where they live, and they not really have big occasion to go elsewhere. And so Toronto was an important moment for her, and for Mamie in particular, and Kim as well. And as you have seen, they were able to hold their fort and were not intimidated, because they know who they are, and they know what cause they are fighting for, but one important thing I think that she did say in Toronto, and she said, "Oh, I'm so happy because now I feel that I'm not alone. I don't have that weight on my shoulder because I'm not alone to tell that story, because she felt she was the chronicler of that story, and she was the one to make sure that the story is kept being told." And now with the film, it was some sort of freedom, in front of, because she identified with the film. She doesn't, they didn't give me notes. In fact, the only thing she said at some point that was out of humility, I think, where she, the scene where she cursed about those police and people coming to survey the land. She just lashed out, and it was very spontaneous. And she said, "Oh, do you think those people need to hear me curse like this?" And I say, "Well, it came out, and it was strong, and it's one of the best moments in the whole film." And later they hear you, because she thought, "I don't want people to think that I'm racist." Can you imagine that? Even saying it, I'm very emotional. And I said, you also said other things during the film that show that, what your thinking is, that it was, in fact, not so much about race, but about class, about poverty and people having money, taking advantage of other people. And she said, okay, I get it. But it was, for her, an important moment that the film finally is there, and that other people beyond the county, beyond Beaufort, beyond North Carolina will be able to be part of that story.
I want to thank Raoul Peck for speaking with me. His film Silver Dollar Road is streaming on Amazon Prime. If you delve into our podcast archives, you can hear him speak about I Am Not Your Negro on episodes 21 and 31. Thanks to our team, series producer Hannah Norden-Swan, marketing manager Bella Racklin, and web designer Cross Strategy. Our theme music is composed by Andre Williams, and our executive producer is Raphael Nehausen. I'm Tom Powers. You can follow us on Instagram and subscribe to our free newsletter at purenonfiction.net.